All right, well, changing pace here. People living in Los Angeles are accustomed to gridlock on their expressways. But now a U.S. labor dispute has created the maritime equivalent of a chronic traffic jam at sea. Dozens of ships heading into 29 ports on the U.S. West Coast are anchored at sea waiting for dock space that's taking weeks to free up because of a contract dispute between dock workers and their employers. Now, this is crippling international trade and causing a ripple effect. U.S. President Obama has dispatched the U.S. Labor Secretary to urge both parties to reach a deal, and fast. Chris Casquejo has more.
More than 30 massive container ships wait to dock in Los Angeles and Long Beach. Almost 1,500 kilometers north in Seattle, 16 hulking vessels sit in Puget Sound, waiting their turn to unload their cargo. Longshoremen were locked out over a long U.S. holiday weekend, the latest move in a 9-month labor dispute that has been disrupting global supply chains from Singapore to Seattle. This week, Honda Motor Company announced production slowdowns at 3 North American assembly plants, making the Civic, CR-V, and Accord because of auto parts that haven't arrived from Asia.
It is a slow-bleeding death.
At this Seattle warehouse, workers load trucks with paper products headed to Japan and Shanghai. The third-generation family-owned business estimates losing around $1 million since U.S. dock workers began their work slowdown in October 2014.
So right now, our dock workers have felt the biggest pinch. Probably a third to a half of those 70 employees have had their hours cut or have been laid off temporarily.
The work slowdown is having a ripple effect on many other businesses. Some analysts estimate the majority of West Coast hay exporters are losing about 50% of their business each month, with losses in tens of millions of dollars and climbing by the day. Shipping hay through ports in Canada and the Gulf Coast would cost too much for companies like Callaway Trading, an animal feed exporter in eastern Washington state. Since the dispute began, Callaway's sales are down around $10 million. The company also had to cut back on workers' hours.
I know that the banks, they start to ask more and more questions about, talk to us about your cash flow, why hasn't it improved? And their patience, I think, begins to wear thin not too far from now. You just can't sustain millions of dollars in losses and expect to continue to remain in business.
Blaine Callaway worries about losing his Asian customers because of the slowdown. Callaway predicts they will look to other countries like Spain for livestock feed. Transport company manager Joey Stavala believes he's lost business that he won't get back.
We think we're going to lose customers not just in the short term, but long term. I've already talked to long-term customers that we've had who are now using Canada or Houston or the East Coast.
What has happened to Stavala could happen to all of America's West Coast ports, which handle more than 70% of Asian imports to the U.S. Chris Casquejo, CCTV, Seattle.